Hello everybody, I'm Chris Callahan, also known as Mr. C, and today we're going to talk about skewers. Skewers are small to medium-sized rodents, including such animals as tree skewers, ground skewers, chipmunks, marmots, groundhogs, flying skewers. I'm sorry, those are squirrels. I got confused. Skewers, right, we'll do that. Skewers, chess skewers, are a chess tactic where you attack a very powerful piece, and that piece presumably has to move out of the way, and which allows you to take another piece behind it. You may see this and think, isn't that called a pin? And I understand the confusion. Pins are very similar. Skewers and pins are both tactics that involve attacking chess pieces that are all lined up. But the difference is, in a skewer, the more powerful or the more important piece is in the front, while in a pin, the more important piece is in the back. This actually doesn't make much difference. I'm sure you won't mind too much forgetting what the word is as you take all their pieces, but if you're interested in that sort of thing, that's how that works. Skewers can be done by any piece that moves in a straight line that goes to the other side of the board. So we're talking about rooks and bishops and queens. You can do it with bishops. Here's a bishop skewer. The king will move and you will win the queen, right? Skewered up there. You can do it with queens, of course, going diagonally or to the side. Here's a skewer that wins the rook. And not all skewers involve kings. I know all those previous examples were all kings because I wanted to give examples with kings, but you can do it with other sorts of pieces too. Here's a skewer with no kings in it. The queen is in danger. Presumably the queen will move away to save itself, and then we win the rook behind her. Now, because it's chess, things can never be so simple, and there are always little tricks and ways you could wriggle out. It's not like you just set up the skewer and say, skewer, and stand up from the chessboard and you win. For example, in this position, white has just played a skewer, and this is a skewer. The king will move and will win the queen, right? Except, of course, the king will move to take the bishop. So it was a skewer, just not a skewer that worked. Another trick you need to know is that if the most powerful piece at the front of the skewer can move out of the way and cause trouble somehow, then the skewer also won't work. So here's a skewer. The rook is skewering the queen to the rook, but there are at least 3 escape hatches for black. The first one that black can do is simply move the queen out of the way to a place that protects the rook. So if I take the rook, the queen just takes back, and we just traded rooks. You didn't win anything. The other thing you can do is give a check. So if I played queen here, check, then we don't have time to take the rook because the king has to save himself. And after the king saves himself, we have another move to save the rook. So, as always, we need to practice. Here we go. You are playing white. You are trying to skewer something. I'll give you a moment to think. Pause your videos if you like. Well, the correct answer here is a classic skewer, bishop to c3. Skewering the king after the king moves, we will win the queen. Practice position number 2, here we go. You are playing white, same thing. We are looking for a skewer that wins something very important. I'll give you a moment to think. Pause your videos if you like. Well, this is something that comes up a lot. Anytime the king and the queen are lined up like this, that should really send up some red flags for you. That should catch your attention. And the correct move is rook to d4 check. Oof. The king will move somewhere and we will win the queen. Here's another one. White to play. You know the drill. Find me something to skewer. Take a minute to think. Pause your videos if you like. Well, the answer here is bishop to f3, attacking the queen. And of course, when the queen moves away, wherever the queen moves away, there is a rook behind her, right there. Okay, last one, and hopefully I've saved the hardest one for last. Hopefully it's not too hard. I'll give you a moment to think. Find me a skewer. Pause your videos if you like. Well, the answer here is rook to h4. And this attacks the queen, and behind it, the rook. This one's a little bit interesting because you would think that the queen should be able to go somewhere and cause a problem. but none of the ways that she would be able to do that quite work out. One thing she could do is give check to the white king, and then after the king moves, we could save the rook, but there's just no check. There's a check here, but that loses our queen, and there's no other check. The other possibility that we may have had is that the queen could go somewhere that would protect the rook, but we can't go to e8 to protect the rook because there's a pawn in the way, and we also can't go to e5 to protect the rook because there's a pawn in the way. The thing I wanted to point out is that if these pawns weren't here, black would have a very, very improved position. All right, I think that's enough about skewers for now. I hope everybody enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Bye.